Hello, and welcome to Carnival Personnel Sideshow. I'm Jacques.
This is Biff.
Hey, it's your old buddy Joe.
And today we're going to half-ass our way through another sideshow that a couple hours before we hit go on the mics, I text the guys and say, why don't we do this? In this episode called Do You Believe in Miracles? Yes. Is that a line?
Magic, right?
That's a great line from Ted Lasso when Ted uses that, and walking out like the British kid says to the assistant coach, it's like, is that from a movie or real life? And he's like, yes.
Yes.
But I've had conversations along these lines with Joe on car trips and just conversations and Biff, but we're gonna get down to what we really believe, and we hold dear to our hearts, and the hills we're gonna die on. And I'm gonna start.
This is like In Search Of, but instead of being hosted by Leonard Nimoy, it's hosted by three red shirts.
That's right. That is exactly correct.
I don't know where to start, but I'm gonna start with this. Biff, do you believe in ghosts?
100%.
Joe?
I ain't afraid of no ghosts because I don't believe in them.
Okay, so Biff, do you have some reason why you believe? Have you had an experience? Do you know firsthand, or have somebody who's had an experience? What makes you think ghosts happen?
100% cultural. It's just something that is ingrained into my people. Just like for some reason, we'll get to another subject later on. It's one of those things that I think, however way we got raised or whatever, we kind of accept the fact that, accept it as kind of fact that, ghosts are a thing.
I know that Mr. Sparkle in The Simpsons banishes dirt to the land of wind and ghosts. So that's maybe something similar.
And what episode is that, so I can go back and do my
It's the Mr. Sparkle episode,
Season 3, episode 7.
Or season 6, 7.
But still in the good decade. I do. I 100% do. Personally, I do not think I've ever experienced a ghost per se, but there's been some times when I've been like, you get these feelings, and I know how stupid this sounds, like that you're not alone at a place, that there's something there that you can't quantify, because you all have that feeling where you're being watched and you turn around and there's Joe peeking through your window. I mean, Maybe that's just me. Not this Joe, a completely other Joe who's totally creepy. Not like this show is totally not creepy. No, but there's been those things where you've been there, and it was a few years ago for about a week. I kept having the same weird feeling, and I even told my wife, I'm like, for some reason, and I'm not. This isn't leading into a bit. For some reason, honestly felt that my biological dad, for some reason, was trying to contact me. And I don't believe hard in these things. I would never watch any of those ghost hunting things, but I couldn't shake that feeling for a full week.
Does he owe God money? Is that what
he wasn't a big gambler,
Okay.
I guess maybe with STDs in the 70s and 80s or 60s. I don't think sleeping with numerous amounts of women simultaneously was something he started just in 1975 when he left. Episode 4, Daddy Issues.
But he certainly won the lottery then.
And I could not. With him, I think it was a sheer number of quantity over quality.
Oh, okay.
So
sorry.
But yeah, no. 100% I do. I also believe along the lines. It's funny. I'll just throw it out there now, because a lot of this shakes off this tree. I'm an atheist, and I so badly want to believe and a magical being in the sky that is going to reward me for being a good boy on this planet. So I don't believe in a God per se, but I definitely believe in ghosts. For me, I've told my boys, it's like, when I'm gone, I'm gone. This is just a shell. the only way I'm going to get into an Ivy League school if you donate my body to like Harvard Medical so that they can practice opening a sternum on a corpse. It's like, and so that's the only way I'm going to get into Harvard. I'm like, but like I said it to you before,
Well,
Biff,
I will tell you this one thing of that. One thing my mom told me before she died, and this was a long time ago. It wasn't like at her deathbed or anything like that. But we were talking about, I don't know what led to this discussion, but I think I know. So it's normal for Japanese to have these family, they're not really like plots, but because the Japanese cremate, right? Essentially, the ashes end up in these little, like little urns and stuff like that, and then they have these areas in these family cemetery, plots, if you will, where there's like basically a lid that opens, and you could put the new member of the family that's departed into this container at a cemetery, right?
It's kind of like that Star Wars action figure set that it was shaped like Darth Vader's head.
So I guess
It has, like,
yes.
little compartments.
Right. Yeah, I mean they
really broke it down for me.
Is it not the mausoleum, but whatever? They have those kinds of things, in other cultures. But that's Japan kind of tight with space. So anyway, though, one of the things that so it started with a discussion of how my aunts and uncles wanted to have my dad's body moved from that cemetery to somewhere more convenient because they're in the boonies, and then that eventually led to this discussion of, if you ever put my ashes into that place, I will haunt you forever.
Yeah,
so I don't want my mom haunting me. So she does not go there.
My Korean mother-in-law had very specific things for the same reasons.
Yeah.
No, different reasons, but akin to those. No, what I was going to say, and you get this, Biff, I say it to my boys all the time, you can always find me in the drift. Which is from Pacific Rim, when he tells he knows he's going on a suicide mission, and he tells his daughter, it's like, don't worry, you can always find me in drift. I believe, and we can get into this later, but I 100% believe in the Force. I'm an atheist, but I do believe in guardian angels. I believe there's been more.
There's a fallen angel, aren't you?
There you go. There's been more than a few times in my life that I won't bore us with. I should have died. Or been maimed or seriously hurt. Like, I drove a friend to San Diego, driving back. I forget what highway. I'm going a little too fast. It is raining, and it's traffic. It's not bumper to bumper traffic, but I do at least 3 or 4 times, like a spin out, like, going forward, going clockwise 3 or 4 times, and a pocket of nothing. Like, luckily there was cars a quarter mile behind me or a quarter mile ahead of me, but the rest of the trip down and back, had that happened, had I done half a spin once, I would have been hit. I would have flipped, all these things.
Right.
There's no reason, like the stroke of luck, that happened. And, so many other times that, being a kid doing stupid things, we've all had that we should be dead story. I have at least a half a dozen that I know of. Not the ones in a drunken stupor that I have no idea, but there's no reason that, at one point, what I mean, a ghost distant relative, or, the ghost of, like, Bill Finger, who said, hey, this is a huge Batman fan, I'm going to keep this kid around more.
If that's true, then I think there's just it's kind of like, I picture, if there are guardian angels, then the world is kind of like being guarded by maybe like 12 guardian angels, and they're all like Costco employees, like, like they're spread out real thin, because there's a lot of shitty things that happen to very nice people who don't have a guardian angel. Was like, on a 2-week break that time, and they were on that flight 93. It's just kind of like there's awful things that happen to great people. And I don't know.
So I'm just dirtbags like me keep getting free passes.
I'm just here to. By the way, I'm just here to laugh and mock all of your beliefs. So this is going to be my final podcast.
Were you under the auspice that we had you here for another reason? know, did you think you played another role in my life, Joe? Hey, I'm feeling pretty good about myself. Hey, let's give Joe a quick call.
Yeah.
My
Right.
ego is feeling too good.
Right.
My britches, I'm getting way too big for. I should not be on a horse this high. Let me. Oh no, my wife is busy. Let me call Joe and just bring me back. Okay, next thing.
Yeah,
UFOs.
sure.
I believe in unidentified flying objects.
Yeah.
I don't believe that they're flying saucers. I don't believe they're little green men.
No, yeah.
So let me ask you this. Do you believe there's intelligent life on another planet somewhere in this galaxy or somewhere in this vast universe?
Yeah, I think so. Only from a probability standpoint that it seems super unlikely that Earth is the only place in this vast,
Hey,
system of systems where all of the right conditions were met to create life. So,
I think that there's always got to be a first, and I think Earth is. I think Earth is the first one. I mean, look, if there is a God, this is kind of like the first experiment, if you will. Like, oh, I'm going to create a planet and see what happens. Oh, all right. Well, I know what to do the next time. Like I think maybe we might be the only.
Let's start with no penises. That seems to be the thing that gets most of the trouble is caused by male genitalia. So we're just gonna take that away.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, I don't rule out the possibility of life on other planets, but intelligent life. I mean, if they are, they're wicked far away.
yeah,
And
I would agree. Yeah.
they're like in like the primordial stages of I don't think there are advanced civilizations, if you want to say that. Like, I don't think that there are alien life forms that can travel across galaxies. I don't know. I think we're it. I mean, that's the thing. It's scary. It's scary to think that this is it. Like, there's no heaven, there's no hell, there's no other planets, there's no friendly.
Slow your roll, John Lennon.
I mean,
imagine there's no.
I'm imagining that like, what if this is it? What if this is the first one? I know I'm killing the premise of this podcast.
No, I think it's great. I mean, the whole "what if this is as good as it gets?" Galactically speaking. What are your thoughts? Biff. I mean,
I just think that we at some point, right? This all came from the whole Big Bang sequence basically kind of happened, and things just kind of spewed out everywhere, right? So it just seems like, from a probability standpoint, just considering how vast this universe is, that it seems really, really unlikely that in the kind of the uncalculable amount of space we have and the number of planets that exist and everything else, that this is the only place where the correct set of circumstances existed for life to develop. Now, I'm more with Joe in a lot of this other stuff, where this whole thing about I'm less likely to believe that there are intelligent life that had bothered to travel to a point where they've kind of come around Earth to check it out, right? I think that is probably a lot less likely. But I don't think it's a zero thing either, right?
Yeah, I don't want to think of Earth as the Grand Canyon of the galaxy or the universe. Right.
So I just think, from a probability standpoint, it just seems it's really, really unlikely in a place this vast that this is the only place where the correct set of circumstances existed for life to develop.
I've always believed in UFOs and aliens having visited the Earth, and I still kind of do. One of the few things that give me pause is I remember listening to Carl Sagan. This is maybe 15 years. If it was maybe. Who am I thinking of? The guy in the wheelchair who talked through the voice box? Stephen Hawking. I think it might have been Stephen Hawking who said he believes. I think he believed, because of just the sheer numbers, numbers. I mean, we're a small galaxy and there's 9 planets here, and some of the moons, many of the planets have moons bigger than Earth. You know what I mean? So just in this galaxy, there's like 50 Earth size and bigger. Anyways, but his one thing is like, based on human history, Never once in human history has one tribe of cavemen traveled and engaged with another tribe that the one who had the bigger stick didn't instantly enslave, like murder all the men and enslave all the women and children instantly. And and it's the same, go through the history since the beginning of time. Never once has one culture embarked on a trip that came across another one that they weren't slightly more technologically advanced for, and that happened every single time. Not once did it not happen. Still happens to today. Oh, you have oil here and you don't have nuclear capability? Well, I guess that oil is ours now. But and so when he said that, he goes, but at the same time, he's projecting humanity onto a race of people.
Right. Yeah.
And when you talk, and what I always love when a sci-fi movie or when people have these discussions, if I saw a UFO, if you saw a UFO once, the amount of technology, like warp speed would have to exist. Hyperspace would have to exist for somebody to travel to this planet, because the Hubble telescope hasn't picked anything up yet. So you would have to travel beyond the Hubble telescope's abilities to get here. And if you have the technology to do that, I think you've worked your way around our little atom bombs, our little hydrogen bombs, our little, pea shooters. It literally would be like the old Superman 50s show. The bullets didn't work, but I'm going to throw the gun at him, and that's going to knock him down. So that's giving me pause. But yeah, it would not surprise me to know that aliens built the pyramids, that aliens built. I'm not saying they did, but I'm also, wouldn't it be like, oh yeah, I find that hard to believe.
I take that as sort of a jab against the culture of people who did build the pyramids. It's like, you're too freaking stupid to build the pyramids. It's got to be aliens. No way, you idiots. No way you morons could have built this. What are you talking about? They're right there. Nah, that ain't you.
I base that on every documentary that I've seen that talked about the precision and the tools that they had at the time and what they pulled off. And I won't go too far down the rabbit hole, but at one point they realized, oh, these X amount of pyramids kind of resemble a what do you call it? An astrological body in the side, except it's missing, one pyramid would be right here. And then they actually do some deep space forensic or infrared. And it's like over the course of the last 2,000 years, the river had changed and they actually went underwater, and they're like, holy fuck, there is a pyramid down here where that thing, and the corners on them, like the precision of the right angles that are hard to replicate with today's tools and engineering and architectural advances. Every architect I've ever talked to, and it's weirdly enough, I do know a few who are like, yeah, it's pretty unfathomable that they were able to do what they were able to do.
Sort of the Egyptians outsourced to the the contracting to the aliens, or it's kind of like the aliens just sort of showed up to a barren planet or a barren part of the planet. I mean, what a perfect place. There's so much land in all of these other directions. What's the most perfect place to build, our pyramids than in the desert where there's nothing?
No, look, I'm not saying these theories don't have flaws. I'm not saying there might have been a couple loopholes in the first Star Wars, or checking notes, every Star Wars. But
I do know that according to Star Trek, aliens are all humanoids and they all speak English. So
that's right.
Which is amazing. No, but when I think of that, and I know how illogical for a person who likes to think himself as a very logic-driven person and science-based person. Yeah, it is highly illogical that would happen. And part of it is like, yeah, I kind of want to believe it. I kind of want to believe that, I'm the last starfighter and I'm going to do so good at this video game that a race is going to see my Resident Evil skills and realize, oh, we put this game here as a test to find the best person to do this. So We need you. No, I mean, it is an interesting thought, but
Did
I
anybody
can,
ever have either one of you have a UFO sighting?
I have not personally, but I have listened to a lot of Art Bell when I used to be in a touring band in the 90s. I used to, honestly, like pre-internet, I remember writing the radio station he was based out of saying, I'm driving across the country to Los Angeles, and could you give me a guide that says which station I can pick Art Bell up on? I mean, I'm not kidding. I cannot tell you how many long trips when I was playing junior hockey, when I was playing, in the band, or just moving back and forth, that Art Bell was always one of the reasons I used to like to drive off hours, less people on the road, and listen to that. So I think part of it is I want to believe. Here is something that I'd be very interested to see what you guys think. I honestly believe at one point, somewhere in our development, well, if that's the same thing. One of the reasons about the pyramids, we were so advanced then, and there was no advances in architecture for centuries after that. It's like, wait, what? And Joe Rogan, when he used to be funny, had a great routine, an absolute amazing routine about how advanced we were, but there was a disease that ravaged people who had an IQ over a certain point, and only the dumb people survived or something like that. But no, I believe some point in our development, we're going to be able to fly. And again, I base that on two things. One, I really want
I
it
fly
to be
all the
true.
time.
I
fly all
really,
the time.
you know what I mean.
Unless you're using Southwest, then you're not flying.
then you're not.
Yeah, then you're grounded. Yeah.
I really, really want to believe it. And two, no matter where you do any research or what documentaries you see with neurologists and brain specialists, people, I've seen it as between 10 and 20% is what experts say we've used our brain. Like we've only tapped in, like that Einstein on his best day was using between 10 and 20% of his brain power. And what are we going to be able? Does gravity become a quaint little I don't know, limitation when you untap the other 80% of your brain?
You know how birds fly? You know how birds fly?
Well, I know they suddenly appear every time you're near, because just like me, they long to be close to you.
They're mostly air. Their bodies are mostly air, and they have very aerodynamic, what do you call them there? Wings. So they can, use physics to their advantage to become airborne and fly. Humans are mostly water and pizza.
But you're basically saying that we're going to be X-Men at some point, right?
Pizza. Yes. Well, first of all, it's been argued, Joe, that I am mostly full of hot air. Therefore, if somebody
I don't know how
this
thing works.
So we've all seen and heard those stories about the 80-year-old farmer's wife who's in the house and she sees the tractor fall on her husband, who runs out and picks up a tractor off her husband, or a mom or a dad who's like lifted a car off there. They never were able to do it again, but that the super strength gets tapped into. And again, I've never actually seen footage of it.
Yeah, I think that's that's your
Call
classic,
bullshit.
video or it didn't happen.
It's called adrenaline, and they feel it after it happens. It's like in the moment, yes, you can do something that you normally didn't think that you could, because you're basically like on crack for about that much, that much time. So you think your inhibitions are all gone, and yes, but there are physical limitations. But no, I don't think.
There's also the alternate of meth, right? That's the other alternate.
Yes,
right?
We also have meth. Thank God for meth.
No, when people are on angel dust and they do incredible feats. Or look, in hockey, like how many times, Biff, have we seen a guy truly break a leg and finish a shift?
But that's very different from the X-Men I'm going to fly. those are
Right.
two different things.
But my whole thing is, well, have you guys ever heard these stories or seen the documentaries or read how we only use 10 to 20% of our brain? What do you
okay,
think
yeah.
is going to be unlocked in that 80%? Like, it's
More intelligence, so that we don't have this shit show going on in Congress.
Yeah, I think it would be basically, yeah, we'll have better ways to process knowledge. It's we're not going to be like, it's not like you make it sound like the brain has like some sort of, I know it's all because there's a connection to some force or whatever that makes it where the
It
brain can
binds us.
tap. Yeah,
I really
through us.
liken it to the what a computer can do now versus what it used to do, say in the 80s, right?
yeah.
I think
Oh,
it's kind of closer to that.
And how come my iPhone? My iPhone is so much. It has so much more brain power than me, and yet it can't fly. If I drop it, it breaks pretty easily. It's a pretty fragile device. So once we can make computers like, or a machine, without jet propulsion or aerodynamics, levitate, then you got me. But I don't know. Maybe it's the color of our sun. We're only getting the power from our yellow sun,
Right?
So
Thank
maybe
you.
if we had a
Thank
red
you.
sun or a pink
I
sun.
mean, one of the things that always amazes me, and we've all seen them. I think Biff has seen these more than I have, and I think I might have seen them more than you, Joe. When you see these 4-year-old kids who are just shredding on a guitar, or just, there was this little Japanese girl a few years ago, the clip went around where she is playing, oh, I forget what Zeppelin song it is, and they played it for Robert Plant on a show, and he's like, I've had so many studio musicians who have come close to what what it was when we originally record that, and I've never seen anybody nail this and with such ease. It's like, that's one of those things. It's like gifted people live among us. Absolutely gifted people live among us who can do these unimaginable things, and whether there was no footage of Beethoven actually writing those symphonies when he was 4 years old, but now you can't go to TikTok without seeing a 3-year-old playing Beethoven still in a diaper. You know what I mean? Can't control their bowels, but can absolutely shred on a guitar, can play drums better than Neil Peart. They can, do these incredible things. And that's the kind of stuff I'm like, oh, there's something in that person's brain that has been unlocked that is just happening, that doesn't happen in anybody else. And that's why they can do this. And what happens when we can intentionally hook up into that?
I don't know. Maybe that 4-year-old's parents didn't park him in front of a Fortnite.
Well,
or
plus, I think once again, I think with many things, right? Over the years, they have gotten better at essentially training, right? So if you look at athletes, right, the hockey players of today will blow away hockey players from the 70s, despite all of these geezers want to believe that the 70s hockey was better. No, 70s hockey was garbage.
And it wasn't. And you're right, because it's not due to the maybe a slight evolution of the brain, but it's mostly about the accumulation and passing down of knowledge.
Yeah.
But some of these kids are like even barely not able to talk and do these amazing things. That's the other thing.
But I think it's the intersection. Right? We know that that people aren't the same, right? So you have that intersection of somebody who's able to provide the proper training, intersecting with a child who has more of a talent along those lines than some of the others, and that's how you get right. Because like just you look at these kids playing hockey, you have all these kids, thousands of kids being trained kind of in the same way, and then a few will come out that's just like ridiculous.
No,
and it's because you have that intersection. I think
maybe we need more flying schools. Like younger,
Thank you.
teaching these kids how to fly at an early age.
I'm down with that. Okay,
push these kids out of windows.
Hey, what are they disagreeing with Putin on things? Because that's well, a lot of journalists in Russia have been trying to fly the last 20 years. I had forgotten to put this on the list. Do you think time travel will ever be a reality?
Forward? Yeah. I mean,
And I don't mean people listening to the podcast hitting the fast forward button. I don't mean that kind of time travel.
I mean, Mr. Back to the Future speaking.
Yes.
I don't know about, I don't want to burst anybody's bubble. I do. But I don't think we can travel back to the past. I don't think the time is like a linear kind of thing where it's just kind of like you can pinpoint where we're constantly leaving some sort of like time stamp on the universe just by being, so I don't think that you can just go back to a specific, save point in the timeline and specifically like Earth's timeline. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think there's any of that, but I think because of the theory of relativity, I think you might be able to travel further beyond your years artificially, by slowing down your aging process. You know what I mean? Like, so I think you may be able to do it or get to that point faster than you normally would. So I think traveling forward in time is possible, like basically using rocket ships, like, going way out into space and then coming way back.
Wormholes and stuff like that.
Maybe, or just or just traveling closer to the speed of light, where the closer you get to the speed of light, the less, I guess it slows down things and it gets all timey-wimey.
Yeah.
But I think traveling forward in time might be possible, but I don't know about, I'm not going to be able to go back and hit on my mom, if that's what you're saying.
Yeah.
No, your mom would have been hitting on you.
Me. Yes,
right.
I'm sorry.
Get it right, Calvin.
My line, George.
Yes, you should swear. Okay, so I had
Biff,
that.
what do you think?
Oh, a hard no.
Hard
Yeah.
no.
Time
Hard
travel.
no.
Yeah.
Like,
I
not
think-
now, do you think ever? Like 400 years in the future?
I think a hard no, only because just the actual logistics of that happening in terms of, I don't think we are not physically made up that way.
I mean, our grandparents lived in the most phenomenal time in history. That, our grandparents were born into a world without cars. And in a span of 60 years, or a span of like really, about 60 years, we went from no cars to walking on the moon. Well, first I should say, do you guys believe we went to the moon? I mean, let's get a baseline. Did we go to the moon? Okay. So we got off this flat Earth and we went to the flat moon. Okay. No, but seriously, in our grandparents' time, when you think about, silent movies to Avatar, which isn't as impressive, is going from horse and buggies to the Model T or the Model A. I don't think they started with T. I think they worked their way through the alphabet, just like with Preparation H. But in my grandfather's lifetime, he was born in a world without cars and saw a man go to, and before that, in his lifetime, in the 20s, they thought the moon was made of cheese, So if you go back
I think these are all stupid myths. I don't think people ever believe, like, the whole thing about the flat Earth. People knew the Earth was round for, the whole thing about Christopher Columbus and the Earth is flat thing. That's been debunked. It's just, stupidness of stupid people. So
people know the Earth is round now, and there are people who think the Earth is flat.
Because they're just
Kyrie Irving. Kyrie Irving. No, but my whole point as far as technology goes, people in 1900, before the Wright brothers, couldn't believe you're actually going to be able to do that.
I think the fundamental difference is that what you're describing are all advanced versions of things that we observe now to be done, right? Cars are an advanced version where instead of a horse, you got an engine. It's just, it just works a lot better, right?
What's amazing to me is with Star Trek, how many people had gone up. Oh, who is the guy who played Scotty? Why am I blanking on his name?
James Doohan.
So I've seen so many documentaries where he's talked to people who have told him flat out, I saw Star Trek. And because of you, I wanted to be an engineer. I wanted to be part of the building blocks that is going to get to what that show was. And these are people who are MIT professors and just the most advanced robotics, the most advanced. And he said no matter how many times people came up and told their story about watching Star Trek, seeing the technology, and knowing, you know, it's funny with my physicist dad. I remember him saying with a project he was on that it doesn't exist, it can't be done. We're 20, 25 years away. But if we push the chips in the middle of the table and make it a priority, it can be done in 7 or 10. The thing that amazes my dad the most, when John F. Kennedy said we're going to be on the moon in 10 years, that was the most asinine, foolish statement a human being could have made. We were 50 years away at best. And when he said we're going to be there in a decade, what had to happen? And the same thing with the Manhattan Project. The fact where we started and where we wound it up in that time. And again, they went around, they rounded up all the smartest eggheads they could, locked them in a room and says, you guys can come out when you figure this shit out.
Right.
And they did. What should have taken 20 years.
What are we talking about, by the way? We went from time travel to a horse and buggy.
Well, that's the whole thing. Like all these things, like warp speed.
I think, like I said, I am clearly not conveying this to you, but I think that everything that you said, like going to the moon, are advanced versions of things that things. Basically, we know that birds can fly, right? We don't see birds fly out of the atmosphere, but they're advanced versions of actual air propulsion, which is a thing, right? But there is no parallel to time travel. There is none. That is not. There's nothing that you can compare. This is like a better version of doing this, right?
By the way, if somebody did go back in time, how would we know?
They would be winning. They would have a record of picking Super Bowl winners 20 years in a row.
Yeah, so it's that's the whole Back to the Future Part 2 thing. It's like, okay, so if I go back to 50 years ago, and then I do something, I'm ostensibly changing the timeline that I knew, and then I make a change, and then I go forward from that point. Do I return back to the reality and then now we opening up parallel universes, which the multiverses are way in nowadays. I know everybody's got a portal and a wormhole and multiverses, but I don't know about that. It gets a little too it's fun to talk about, I think honestly, as long as there's regret, there'll be the dreams of time travel.
So Biff, along your line of talking and thinking that these are just forwarding of technologies, will we forward in technology where warp speed becomes a thing? Will we be able to travel at light? And not in our lifetime, not in the next 100 years, next 200 years, but if we can go from the Model A, from Kitty Hawk, North Carolina, which I don't believe was a real flight. I think that was more of a glider that had a lawnmower engine on it, but we went from Kitty Hawk to the moon in 50 years. What happens in the next 400 years?
Yeah. I don't think that we can travel at that speed. It might be, and I don't even know that I can't think of a way to work out the physics for something to be, like an actual vehicle to be propelled that fast. I think you could propel, particles that fast because that happens all the time. But traveling at the speed of light, just, the physics just don't add up. And traveling at the speed of light where there's somebody inside, the body doesn't hold up, right? The whole, what has to happen for you to get there, the body is not, is not made up to be able to do that. So I just don't think that whole idea of traveling at the speed of light is the thing.
So, we've broken the sound barrier.
Now, if you're a ghost, though,
we've broken the sound barrier. And there's a sonic boom when that happens, when you break the sound barrier. What happens when you break the light barrier? Like, what you know what I mean? Like, what is you disappear essentially because you're faster than light, and the light reflecting off of you cannot be seen because you're moving faster than, so you become invisible. You know what I mean? If you're moving faster than light, then light can't bounce off you because You know what I mean?
Well, I might be able to answer that because to girls in junior high, I was invisible. So what that entailed was
You've broken the light barrier a long time ago.
So I'm taking a Biff's a hard no on being able to beam people up at one point.
Oh, that's
Correct.
different. That now you're talking about matter trend, like that's different. You know, what was it? It's a like matter transformation where you take mass into energy and then energy back into mass. And I mean, that's a tricky thing. They basically like what happened. Yeah, that's another thing altogether. I mean, like. You ever try to put a puzzle back together? It's or you put something that you unscrewed back together and you have an extra screw left over.
Right,
You don't
and that's
want
why
that
we
happening.
have 2 kids.
We don't want that happening. Why didn't anybody tell me my ass was so big? We don't want any of that happening. Spaceballs reference. No, I that's crazy. But I mean, warp speed, going faster than the speed of light. I can't. I'm going to say I won't rule out that that's not possible. But it's based on our
English. That's implausible.
That's impossible.
Impossible.
But yeah, I don't think that we will see that happen in our lifetime. Maybe not even in our kids' lifetime. But I think it's something to strive towards.
So here's something we are striving towards that I'm interested on hearing your takes. Does AI take over? Are we destined to live in the world of the Terminators?
It's already happened.
Right. No, I'm dead. Biff, I don't know if you've seen all those crazy robots that can now do
Yeah.
Do you know those are all, and I'm not kidding, that company that puts out those awful scares me, and every time I see it on Twitter, I post, well, we had a good run. That company is about halfway between where I live and Joe lives. It is
Boston Robotics.
It is truly. I drive by that.
Boston Dynamics.
It's an MIT like it's a bunch of. I thought it was like originally like a side company of a bunch of MIT engineering professors. I thought.
And now, like just this in the past year, and we talked about it on the podcast. It's like having the Geneva Convention and having rules of war, but yet not holding Putin accountable. All the companies that are developing these robotics have signed a pledge to never weaponize them. Right, exactly. It's like,
what I mean. This is.
I winked, by the way.
Thank you.
This is the lesson they're trying to apply from basically the Manhattan Project, right? The aforementioned Manhattan Project, right? Because they said, hey, you know what? That was a bad idea. The science was totally cool, but the idea not so great, right? So,
Joe, could you weigh in on your thoughts about just because a scientist can do something?
Just because you were so enthralled, or you were so I forgot the line. Was it you were so? What's the line, George? I don't know the line.
Standing on the shoulders. Standing on the shoulders of others came before you, and these marvelous things you created. You spent time thinking what you could do.
You never stop to think if you should. That's a Jeff Goldblum, by the way, in case you were wondering what the fuck I was trying to do.
But that's the whole thing. It's like they're saying, "Oh, we're pledging not to weaponize this." Great, I applaud that. I applaud the Geneva Convention that is never upheld. I mean, if the Geneva Convention was worth the paper it was written on,
it's not so much. I'm not so worried about the fact that those guys aren't going to do
right.
that. It's but the technology is going to be stolen, and
it's
somebody
gonna,
will weaponize it. So
and not just stolen, but here's the whole thing: it's going to be sold. It's like
sure
they don't have hedge fund investors to pay these people to develop it, and the research and the development and just the raw materials to make these amazing machines. Somebody's not giving them that money to break even.
But by the way, you're making it sound like AI was going to be weaponized against humanity by other humans.
Themselves.
AI is going to be it'll just become self-aware like Skynet, and then it'll weaponize itself against humanity. So I do believe that at some point AI will it will. I think we'll get to the brink of like, hey, this is getting a little out of control. I read an article years ago that there was an experiment with some researchers in AI where they wanted to have computers or artificial intelligence communicate with each other faster, and apparently they got to a point
Yes.
where they had to pull the plug on the project because the AI computers were communicating in a code that was not decipherable by the scientists running the experiment. So basically, AI was creating its own secret language to communicate with each other that the scientists couldn't understand.
And I know that story because my dad gave me the heads up on it. And it was like, he was so excited and scared to share that with me. And that's the thing, is at one point or another, some absolute brilliant 16-year-old who's at MIT is going to be, look what I can do for the sake of doing it. And Kurt Vonnegut said it right. He always hated being lumped in a category with science fiction writers. He used to say, if you're a good writer and you know how a refrigerator works, they call you a science fiction writer. And how many things that were science fiction became science fact over the course of 50 years, 100 years. And again, getting back to, the Star Trek people, the Star Trek fans who through the 60s, the 70s, 80s, to this day say, hey, we're not going to get there in my lifetime, but I'd like to be part of the building blocks. But as far as AI goes, and as far as these absolute Terminator machines, like the machines in Terminator 1 could not do the things that the machines are doing now. It's like, yes, in T2, they got so much better. But when you see these humanoid doing parkour and doing problem solving in real time, they're running from point A. And I've seen, like the last video I saw, it's a changing course. So it's not like they know, when I get to here, I have to jump. When I land on this, I have to roll. When I do this, and it's a changing course that people are changing as it goes. So it's not like they can learn the algorithm, and you're watching it in real time. And then you're talking about what you just did, that secret code. And also, heard a fascinating and scary it was on NPR the other day, an author scientist who has been working on those bots to write novels and write scripts, where they've fed, like, and we've seen people joke about
They're
it,
really
like,
good.
right?
Really good. Yeah.
So the fact that they're doing all of that,
there's AI art on social media right now, which is kind of pissing off real artists. It's like, hey, like they took our job.
Right? Damn government.
The AI took our jobs. We used to be the artists, and now the computers are doing it.
So that's the thing. That's not in our kids' lifetime. That's in our lifetime, where we are right now with AI. Because then AI, when was the first, well, and we all know this, the computing power that got us to the moon by the mid 80s, by 12, 15 years later, the little calculators that we had, right, that the most I ever did was write boobs on it, upside down. Or those stupid things. Those have more computing power than what got us to the moon. And what's in our pockets now, it's so unimaginable to the people working in NASA in 1960, to all the Nazis working in NASA in 1966 to get us to the moon, and the paperclip, initiative. So that's just in the last 20 years. What the internet has got, dial-up, like what the internet is to what it was just 10 years ago.
Well, but I mean, at the heart of it though is, right, it's not, the idea is that AI is going to, by nature, right, it is going to keep advancing, right? Because that's what it is. It's right. It's a kind of a perpetual, kind of a cyclic thing, right? It's a feedback machine, right? It's a feedback mechanism, right? So
it learns from itself.
by nature, right? It's just gonna get better, right? So
And what you're saying, Jacques, is, and with everything else, with the space race, with the information superhighway, it all comes down to government infrastructure. Like if the governments are willing to throw money at it,
Yep.
so that we can, make a better society, or better, warfare, or whatever, or better porn, whatever advances we want to
better
make.
porn. Wow, that's asking a lot. I think that's something that the taxpayers gonna get behind, though.
Joe,
Yeah.
they have pushed the envelope.
Oh, gee. But I think that's all it takes is like, yeah, if there's money to be made and money thrown at it, then yes, it could be done.
I mean, they already have the bomb disposal things in San Francisco. San Francisco is the first municipality in the United States that has authorized robotics to use lethal force. And I don't know if you followed that a few weeks ago, but they now have,
They backed it out, right? I thought they backed out of it.
No, they did not. There was outcry from it, but as of right now, and the checks and balances, it's like we're going to really make sure we shoot a bad guy. That it's not going to be the wrong bad guy, because we've never executed an innocent person in this country, not once, But that's a scary thing. It's like at one point or another, it's either for military use or like, it's cheaper to build this thing than a soldier, and we can just, we don't have to notify next of kin with this thing, or
I build a grand army.
Right. Thank you. The Republic. This is how we die, to boisterous applause. But that's what scares me, because when you see those videos and you see one where Boston Robotics, where iRobot, that's the other one. That's the other one right there on Route 3, Joe. Yeah. And it's a neighborhood TV show, but there's a big company. It's almost exactly halfway between, Joe, iRobot and Burlington, Mass. You see their videos that they put out 5-6 years ago and what they're doing now. And it's like, yeah, we're not talking in our kids' lifetime. We're talking the next 5 to 10 years. We're looking at Skynet. And so.
Damn you, Boston Dynamics. Stop making parkour robots that scare my friend Jacques.
They do. They said,
and by the way, so what? So what if they become the masters of parkour? Like, what the fuck? Like, they only know how to do parkour. Yeah, it's not like they're going to learn, they're not going to learn how to like fire a gun or take your gerb.
Or enslave the human. And they wouldn't enslave us. They would need us for nothing. There's never been a science fiction movie where aliens come to Earth or AI became cognizant when they realized, the only thing hurting this planet are these motherfuckers here.
Let's turn them into batteries for the Matrix.
Right. Thank you.
Anyways, what else do you believe in, you ninny?
Everything. I'm an atheist who believes in everything.
Yeah.
I'm a vegetarian who doesn't eat vegetables. Where I'm a walking contradiction.
Ugh.
That's all I got. Unless you got another one, Biff. Hey, Joe, have you ever wondered? Is Japan real? Have you been there? Do you know? How do we know?
It's not real. Don't go.
It's real small. Hey, by the way, they don't have a lot of cemeteries, but they do have a lot of golf courses. I know. I see that they're using their land wisely.
That actually turned into one of those one of those bubble things. Actually,
oh yeah,
golf course. Yeah.
Wow.
Because back in the 80s, when economy was great and people were willing to pay those stupid green fees and stuff like that, and then there was a golf course bubble.
Oh wow.
There was also this thing, or maybe I'm just talking out of my ass again. But if you can, there became a problem in Japan because there's no driving ranges. And people were going down and like driving off like piers and like you drive so much to the fact that it was affecting the fishing ecosystem in and around Japan. And it's like the number of like whales that were dying because of like, I got a hole in one blowhole.
Who would have thought that throwing, tons of plastic into the ocean would
be
have an
bad.
adverse effect on the environment.
Luckily, we live
shock.
in a country that wouldn't do such a thing.
Oh,
You
shock.
know?
Well, they also do, what's the cove? What's that called?
Right, the dolphin thing.
Something,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So,
See, Japan's not so great.
between that, what you
Good thing it's
There's
not
a
real.
lot of things about Japan that sucks.
Thank God we can look down at other nations because nothing in our past says like horrible people doing horrible things since day one.
If it's one thing our closets don't have, is skeletons.
Oh gosh, nope. I think that's it. I think everybody who's ever listened to this podcast who thought, yeah, Jacques kind of a wingnut.
Right.
It's like,
we didn't talk about like I guess telekinesis and what about
yeah.
mental
Thank you.
telepathy.
Thank you. No, I did have that on the list. You're right. Clairvoyancy. Do you think
What,
that's
like
the thing?
Clairvoyancy, like as far as like speaking
Seeing the
with
future.
Oh.
Do you think there's that? Do you think
Oh.
people can?
No. No, I do not think so. I think there's intuition,
Yeah.
and there can be heightened intuition and just sort of like pattern recognition and luck. But I
Right.
don't think that you can like legitimately say like there was Nostradamus didn't. Yeah, whatever. Hister
Yeah.
instead of Hitler. I don't know. I think it's a lot of like after the fact kind of like backward engineering what he wrote down and
Yes.
a couple of mistranslations to fit the narrative.
Oh, almost like the Bible can almost say anything you want it to. You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Yeah.
No, it's but
But what about like mental telepathy where like I can read your mind? Or how about this? Do you believe that we'll be able to record thoughts,
huh?
That's more
Interesting.
likely, I think.
You know what I mean? Like, I mean, hey, watch Black Mirror. Watch a couple of episodes of Black
Nope.
Mirror.
Nope.
And
Won't do it.
why? What do you do? Oh yeah, I
Yes.
made you watch the Star Trek one. That was a.
Yes, and it haunts me to this day. Yeah, no, I do. I think about like that stuff, telepathy. I mean, it sounds so fucked up, but I mean, Biff, you've seen this in sports where when they talk about just some people just clicking and just knowing where the other one is. And I'm not being funny when I say this. When you talk about like twins and stuff like that, like the Sedin twins and stuff, just making passes to the other one that there's no reason because. Okay, I'm trying to get to point A to point B, but somebody knows that, so they go out of their way to cut off that path. I jump inside to go here, and his brother on the other side of the rink with his back turned to him. If it happened once, great. If it happened 100 times, great. But in their NHL career, it happened 1,000 times, 10,000 times, where a tape-to-tape pass that should not have gone from that guy to that guy, and it's always the same two, and it's like,
You know what that is? That is spending a lot of time with certain individuals. Because you know what? There are things that my management would say. She'll start saying blah, 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 blah. And my son will look at her and say, what are you talking about? And I said, you mean this? And then my son will look at me and he's like, how did you get from that to that? And that's what happens when you spend a lot of time with somebody.
Yeah, you just you have that sort of shorthand with each other.
Shorthand with each other. And that's what I think what it really is.
But do you think telekinesis could happen?
No.
Is that a skill that could be developed?
There is no spoon.
I'm going to say yes again. So I think I've checked yes in every
But that one,
category.
but I will say that is non-zero. Because there is such a thing as a brain wave, right? So the brain wave, if it can be internalized, maybe it can be externalized, right? So I think that is I'm saying I think that one is a non-zero.
Well, we've already established that you believe what Joe threw out there that we might be able to record thoughts.
Yeah.
So if you can record those thoughts, and Joe's tinfoil hat has some kind of receiver, and my tinfoil hat has this, that maybe, like,
Yeah.
I'm thinking of a Simpson line right now, Joe.
I do think, it's non-zero, but yeah.
No donuts.
I'm going to read your thoughts. You know what this means? It means that this damn thing doesn't work at all. Oh man, yeah, I did enjoy this little excursion into the mysteries of the unknown.
No.
Well, I believe in everything.
So we're not gonna do we're not gonna do Sasquatch.
Yes. Yeah.
I'm kidding.
What are your thoughts?
Coming up next on In Search of.
I mean, there's like, it's funny because Joe and I were talking before you logged on earlier, Biff. It's like I mentioned something joking. He's like, nope, we're not doing conspiracy theories. There's, do you believe in this or do you believe in like? We all know for a fact that John F. Kennedy Jr. is coming back sometime soon. He's now a Republican, and he's going to be. Well, that of course is just logical. No, but this was fun.
He's
glad.
one of the Masked Singers, I think. This
well, we kind of. So you and I, well, maybe you might be too young. Like I grew up in an age where this kind of stuff. That I remember going to the movie theater to see this movie called The Outer Space Connection. And there's a bunch. There was a company that made just like those Sharknado people. There was a company that made a bunch of these movies, like this. Like, there was one, having that had to do with, like how like the pyramids and all that stuff, that kind of stuff, So yeah, all that kind of, there was a company that did this kind of stuff. A bunch of them.
We got to look
and
up the Outer
it was in
Space
the
Connection.
70s. Yeah.
Yeah. What is that called, Biff?
It was called Outer Space Connection is the one that I went to see, but there was one with these how like these certain these gods helped humans make the what you're talking about with the pyramids and the like I remember the Easter Island being another thing, or like there was one with Sasquatch, so they had all these different movies that they just pumped out every so often.
Oh, you know who narrated that? One Rod Serling.
Oh, fantastic.
Wow. This is not affiliated, by the way, with the Great Space Coaster.
Okay, all right. No. Hey, no news is good news with Gary News.
Oh, marry me.
Were you, Biff? I don't know when you were in Toronto, but were you here for In Search of?
I remember In Search of those. That's with Leonard Nimoy, right?
Leonard Nimoy. Yeah. Okay. And then there were these, and Joe and I were talking about this last week because, of course, we were. The shows like That's Incredible and Real People, and they would have people come on where they would do. And I remember my cousins trying to do this trick where they would have like, my aunt sitting on a chair and 4 people, like half my aunt's collective body weight, picking the chair up with 2 fingers each. You know what I mean? And this,
right.
You had to stand in this certain way and all of this stuff. Like the 70s TV was just chock full. And where I had no friends, and as we established, was invisible to women, I had a lot of time to watch and take all of that in.
Oh, yeah. I used to. Well, what about the Orson Welles Nostradamus special?
Just his voice alone. Oh, dude, I mean, it's fantastic. It's like he already references the Hitler Hisler thing, and just going and this and that. Absolute. I mean, on his deathbed, the guy still had his voice. I mean, he seriously, he did. That voice was just, it's right up there with Telly Savalas and James Earl Jones as some of the greatest voices to, and
Pee Wee Herman.
Of course. You were just rounding out the top 4 right there,
The dulcet tones of Paul Rubens.
Yeah.
I don't make monkeys. I just train them.
You have derailed.
It's not for sale, Francis.
Oh, Pee Wee, listen to reason.
There's no basement in the Alamo. Which is a line. Nobody on this third rock from the sun says there's no basement in the Alamo more than me. Every time my 15-year-old opens the fridge and the thing he's looking for doesn't bite him, it's like there's no soy milk here. There's no basement in the Alamo. It makes no sense, but each and every time. It gives me a little giggle.
And who delivered that great line in the movie?
That would be Jan Hicks or Hooks.
Yes.
Hooks.
Jan Hooks.
Jan Hooks. The great Jen Hooks, I like to say.
Yes.
Gentlemen, like I said, I threw this out there about 2 hours before we got on. This is the kind of nonsense that keeps me up at night, and I don't think I can talk Biff into it, but we usually leave for Phoenix like really early in the morning because we have if I can only get you to do that drive late and listen to Art Bell as we go through the hour.
Is he still around?
Oh no,
From Beyond the Grave.
Beyond the Grave. Yeah,
no,
but,
I mean, I'm saying like his stuff. Nobody's airing his stuff.
oh
right?
no, but it's all, dude. I mean, I used to collect somewhere in this house. I still have. I might have the cassette still.
I'm sure it's on YouTube, right?
And I have the DVDs of the old Superman radio show, but now when I go to bed, I just say, Alexa, play old time Superman, and it's in order. And it was like you left off at episode 4,861, and it will just play. All the Art Bell stuff is out there, and then Art Bell gave way to a guy named George Norrie, and George Norrie still has a show, but all the Art Bell stuff is cataloged and
I'm
up
sure.
there, and it's genius. And it's about an hour, about 90 minutes to 2 hours before the Arizona border, and about 2 hours after the Arizona border. There's nothing. It's,
Yeah.
I think it's more of like you probably enjoyed those shows more based on the atmosphere in which you were listening. You're in the middle of the desert. You
Yep.
could be abducted by an alien at any given moment, or a trucker, or a trucker.
tell them Large Marge sent
When you say alien in Arizona, it means something else, Joe.
Oh man!
But gentlemen, this was absolutely fantastic for me. I don't know.
Next week we're doing a Pee-wee's Big Adventure sideshow because oh god.
Yeah. Could you handle that, Biff? Could you handle Joe and I talking Pee-wee, or not, or just quoting it for 2 hours?
I've actually watched them, and it's a good movie. I've
It's a
actually
great-
watched it. I haven't seen it in like 20 years though. So
It
it's
still
one-
holds up. It's
it's
a
one of
great
those-
movie.
It's one of those ones. If you go back now, and all the nobodies who have small roles in it that are just, and they were all his friends from the Growlings, playing this little role, that little role, who just went on to be huge.
The woman who is in the biker bar who says, "I say you let me have him first." That is Elvira, Cassandra Peterson.
That's fantastic, But yeah, that's a rabbit hole for another day. But I'm glad we all agree that it all exists except for God.
Because the church says it's true, and we don't buy that.
But seriously,
But if Art
gentlemen,
Bell says it,
right? Gold, man, absolute.
oh, we didn't
gold.
even get into Scientology. Oh wait, we can't.
Don't forget.
The mist lifted like a curtain over the soft-spoken morning that time in October, where the only thing that came between me and the sun were a few of the fresh autumn leaves that had just fallen from the trees. I could see them from across the way. They came out of the bushes like a bunch of scared rabbits, completely filthy like they had just spent the morning bathing in dirt. They walked closer and closer, and I knew that no matter how hard I tried to not walk fast, I would catch up with them eventually. It always happens. There was no escaping it. And even if they didn't, I'd rather they push the stoplight because I wouldn't want to touch anything they'd have touched. It's the same thing every morning. I can't believe it. Every time I get up, I'm always there with them. Why can't they take the bus? 12 dirty cabanas and me. That's all there ever was. And I'd have to go all the way to school with those fucking filthy people. I bet you one of them's in Southbridge right now watching television and the other one's working on some assembly line. None of them are smart enough to ever get out of here. 12 dirty cabanas and me. What a great way to ruin the morning.
Kitty, please.
In Southbridge?
No, for a cabana. As in Copacabana?
Is it a business?
No, a George or a Lucian or a Roland. Any of those.
At the customer's request, the number is non-published.
I was so scared.
I heard
So scared.
it's okay.
I'm so scared because they're going to kill us. They're going to kill us.
Nobody's gonna kill you.
Yes, they are. They're going to kill us.
Nobody's
They're going to kill Busy. They're trying to kill Busy.
Busy's never gonna die.